looking, throwing in the end zone. Montana, touchdown, John Taylor.
Young to the air, Young to Jerry Rice, touchdown San Francisco.
Young stumbles on the way back and fires up the middle. Pass is caught by Owens.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm your host, Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis, plus timely and entertaining sports and pop culture topics. And this episode, we're going to be talking about the 49ers NFC West clinching 45-29 victory over the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to be giving stats and thoughts from the game, going from how San Francisco responded from Arizona's very impressive opening drive, Ronnie Bell's punt return fumble that wasn't, the Niners going on another scoring spree in the second half. Is the run defense going to be an issue moving forward? Brock Purdy trying to solidify his MVP candidacy, McCaffrey tying two San Francisco records, and we'll discuss some injuries coming out of the game. In the plus section, we'll stick with the NFL. We're going to talk the New York Jets eliminated from playoff contention and the Giants basically eliminated. And I'm going to go over my fraud teams after this week, and basically fraud teams in general, the Cowboys, the Packers, the Jaguars. And we're going to talk AFC wildcard teams and NFC wildcard teams, how those races are looking. But like always, it starts with the Niners. So let's get right into it.
Let's talk Niners.
So San Francisco clinches the NFC West in back-to-back seasons, beating Arizona, sweeping the season series for them with a 45-29 victory in Glendale. Arizona was game. They put up over 436 yards on San Francisco, 30 more yards than the Niners had. The Cardinals also had an 8.5-minute time of possession advantage, going to their strong running game, which we're going to talk about. The Cardinals, though, did have 2 turnovers, 2 interceptions by Kyler Murray. Brock Purdy, efficient, again, 16 of 25, 242 and 4 touchdowns. He was not sacked. Kyler Murray, 211 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. He was sacked 3 times. On the ground, San Francisco, McCaffrey, 18 for 115 and a touchdown. As a team, they ran it 26 times for 144 yards and 1 score. James Conner for the Cardinals, 14 rushes for 86 yards and a touchdown. As a team, they battered the 49ers to the tune of 30 rushes for 234 yards and 2 touchdowns. Receiving, McCaffrey again led the way, 5 for 72 and 2 scores. Kittle, 2 for 54. Samuel, 4 for 48 and 2 scores. And Brandon Ayuk, 3 for 37. For the Cardinals, tight end Trey McBride, 10 for 102 yards. And Elijah Higgins, 4 for 44 and a touchdown. The Niners did have 3 sacks, 1 by Bosa, 1 by Kinlaw, and a half a sack each by Chase Young and Fred Warner. Interceptions, 2, both by Charvarius Ward. We'll talk about those more in a bit. And not only was this winning the NFC West, the 49ers clinched a playoff berth before that. They obviously solidify NFC West, being NFC West champions, and this is their 12th straight division wins going back to the end of the 2021 season, and they have one final division game remaining last week of the season at home against the Rams, which might be for home field advantage for the Niners and a playoff spot for Los Angeles. Now, what the players had to say about this, here's McCaffrey's quote about being division champs again. I think obviously winning the division is very important. It's a big step for us, but I think that everybody knows where we want to be, and we know that each week you have to bring your best ball. We're going to get everybody's best shot. So the standards got to continue to rise in practice, meetings, and then obviously for the 3 hours on Sunday. I was worried, or wondering, I shouldn't say worried, if this was going to be any sort of a letdown game for San Francisco coming off of the Eagles and Seahawks. So big game in Philadelphia, big game in Seattle. or a big game at home against Seattle, excuse me. And it wasn't. The Niners were a machine for the most part. We're going to get into a couple areas where there's some hiccups and things that they can iron out. But it was a game, again, where in the second half, they really took control when they were up 21-13 on Arizona to really extend that lead, pull away, and close the door on any potential Cardinals comeback. The 45 points for San Francisco was a season high, and that is coming off of last week where their 500-plus yards were a season high. And in terms of beginning the game hot, San Francisco has scored an opening drive touchdown for the 9th game out of 14, and they have an NFL high 66 points on opening drives, which is, you always want to start fast, right? And if Shanahan wins the toss, they always choose to defer. And this game against Arizona was important, getting off to a quick start offensively because the Cardinals went right down the field, 7 plays, 75 yards in 4 minutes and 20 seconds, scored a touchdown on James Conner's 2-yard touchdown run. It was a drive that looked easy. And, you know, watching all Niner games, especially the last couple years, last 2 years, let's say, when they've been pretty good or really good, the game is still nerve-wracking. There's still early jitters. There's still, our Arizona scored an opening drive touchdown. Is this going to be a shootout? Which it was. Is it going to be a high-scoring game? Can the Niners slow them down? Can they? And generally, regardless of the defensive coordinator, they adjust to what the offense is doing. And sometimes Shanahan has a hand in doing that, sometimes calling out, at least maybe at halftime or between quarters, to the defensive coordinator what the offense is doing against them and how they can counter to stop it. But the Cardinals, you know, being a team that's 3-10 at home, apparently the 49er contingent was slightly over half of the fans out in Glendale, Arizona. Still a home game for Arizona. Still a home game, right? Even though the Niner fans were into it and loud. The Niners were wearing their home red uniforms, which, again, I don't know if that was a psychological ploy by the Cardinals head coach and their management to really get the Cardinals thinking, hey, the Niners are coming in here with all their fans. We're going to make them wear red, make you guys think, Arizona, that this is their home field. If that was a psychological ploy or not, it didn't work. I think the Niners did that at Los Angeles early in the season. They won their they wore their red jerseys, and the Rams were in white. And in that instance, I remember coming on the podcast saying, I don't know if Sean McVay is challenging his team, saying, hey, they call this SoFi West. You know, prove them wrong. And the Rams were very game, but the Niners were able to eke out a win. But Arizona started strong, and that was a glimpse of things to come, even though San Francisco did separate. So Arizona's up 7-0. The 49ers on their first drive respond, going 6 plays, 75 yards in a little over 4 minutes, getting a 12-yard wide open touchdown to Deebo Samuel off a play action. Next Arizona drive, Arizona gets themselves into a 4th down and 3 at the San Francisco 42. And you heard, if you watched the game, commentators saying that they want to attack the 49ers defense, which Arizona did all game, passing and running, and they wanted to be aggressive on 4th downs as well. Kyler Murray throws the ball maybe a half a second late, has Trey McBride, his tight end, open in the middle, settle into a nice hole in the zone, but Charvarius Ward jumps in front of it, coming from behind McBride, picking it off for a 66-yard interception return for a touchdown, making it 14-7. And San Francisco's next drive responding again, going 10 plays, 75 yards in 5 minutes, a 5-yard touchdown pass to Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey running a nice choice route, Texas route out of the backfield, going left, reading where the linebackers or the zone is, cutting right, and Purdy throwing a beautiful pass in between 2 defenders to get the Niners to 21 points. Now, the 49er offense was moving and humming along, but Arizona wasn't backing down. In between that, there was two field goals to get this game to 21-13. It's a one-score game at the end of the first half, and Ronnie Bell takes a punt from inside the 10. Looks like he fumbles at their own 12-yard line, which is scooped up by a Cardinals player and brought into the end zone for a touchdown. Replay reversed the ruling, even though one of the commentators, was it Ron Pitts? It's the guy that just reminds me of Don Cheadle. Looks like him, sounds like him. He should be War Machine. But he didn't really have great analysis here because he kept saying, like, you see the hand was under the... If the hand, the wrist, the forearm touch, it's down. But replay had to make sure that Ronnie Bell's falling to the ground was caused by a Cardinal player, that there was contact, and there was. Ball popped out. Still, though, Ronnie Bell fumbled a punt last week at home against Seattle, but fumbled it right out of bounds. This one on contact, fumbled, scooped up by the Cardinals and scored, but ruled as down by contact. This is how close the margin for error is in the NFL, right? It's a 21-13 game. Arizona, if that play held, makes it 21. It's either 21-19, 21-20, or 21-21, depending on if they go for one, go for two, or don't get it going for two. But that could have been a tie game at the half. Instead, it's an 8-point 49er lead. And with a little over a minute to go, I was surprised that the Niners came out throwing. I like when Shanahan's aggressive, but that almost punt return fumble to me was a sign where, no, let's not tempt fate here. Let's maybe run the ball. And I don't remember what Arizona's timeout situation was. You could try to run the ball on first down. If Arizona doesn't call a timeout, you could just take it to halftime. But they came out throwing. They threw a conservative swing pass to McCaffrey, who picked up, I think, close to 10 or maybe 8 yards. Then they were going to the air again. They were trying to get into field goal range. I will give them credit for that. The drive does stall out. Purdy, though, throws a Hail Mary into the end zone, got a good 55 yards on it. So, I know other players can launch it maybe 60, 65, 70 yards, but he had more than enough on it to get into the end zone. Fell harmlessly to the ground, and it's a 21-13 game. Now, second half, before we get into some of the issues the Niners had, another second half explosion where the 49ers scored on 4 of their 5 possessions. There was one punt, and the 6th possession was a kneel down at the end of the game, which just didn't really matter. But otherwise, they go touchdown, punt, touchdown, field goal. The first touchdown was the wide open blown assignment, Christian McCaffrey, 41 yards down the left sideline. The next touchdown after a punt was McCaffrey taking it in from 1 yard out. And then Deebo Samuel's nice 19-yard back shoulder throw and catch from Purdy. The only place that Purdy could have put it that Deebo would have had a play on it for another touchdown to get the Niners to 42. They added a field goal to get to 45, and they were well on their way. They're, separating up by 20 plus. Arizona did come back toward the end. It was a 45-22 game. Arizona scores late to make it 45-29. They never went away. They didn't quit. This is a team that, even though they're 3-11, they've beaten the Cowboys. They won at Pittsburgh. I think the management, if it's Jonathan Gannon as the head coach, is building it the right way. They're going to have to make a decision on Kyler Murray because they're going to be drafting high enough to potentially take a quarterback and reset their salary cap. Should they find a trade partner for Kyler Murray and a trade partner that would take on most of the contract, it's not really worth trading Murray if you have to eat half of his deal, because then that takes the idea of drafting a rookie quarterback out of the equation. All the benefit of all that freed up salary cap space is not there, but they could draft a Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State. It could be a Drake May. It could be, I think Penix would go too high there. It could be a Daniels from LSU. Not sure what Arizona's going to do, but for all of us thinking that they were tanking in the beginning of the year, they are anything but. And they do have Philadelphia in, I think, 2 weeks. Hopefully they could knock the Eagles down a peg as well. I don't think it'll happen. The Eagles are at Seattle tonight, Monday night, and I'm obviously rooting for Seattle to give a little bit of separation between the Niners and the Eagles for that number 1 seed. What was the big issue if you watched the game against the Cardinals? The Niners' run defense was terrible. This is a team going into the game that averages under or right around 80 yards a game allowed on the ground. The Cardinals ran it for 234 yards and nearly 8 yards a carry and 2 touchdowns. And the Cardinals were balanced. They ran for a little over 100 yards in the first half and about 125 in the second half. There were no adjustments. They did not take away the one thing Arizona was doing really well. Arizona just kept doing it. Now, I understand this is a game where when you're playing without your 2 starting defensive tackles, Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave, there might be some issues when you're plugging in Javon Kinlaw and Kevin Givens, Kalia Davis, T.Y. McGill from the practice squad. And Kalia Davis went out at some point with an ankle injury. So he just had a 3-man defensive tackle rotation. Still, between the Cardinals gashing the Niners up the middle and to the outside, and guys, the missed tackles, I think we need to stop saying that the Niners are generally a good tackling team. Well, that might have been true in years past, but what they are in 2023 is not a good tackling team. They have the players and the scheme and the coaching and the talent and speed to be a fundamentally sound and strong wrap-up tackling team. They're not. They're missing over 10 tackles a game in their losses and in some of their wins. Some upwards of 13, 14, 15 missed tackles a game. You're going to expect missed tackles to happen. You know, running back, I mean, this is why you pay running backs and receivers a whole lot of money. Even Kyler Murray, you know, juking people. Murray didn't kill them on the ground. He had a couple decent runs, but he wasn't a huge part of that 234 yards. I think he might have accounted for around 40, 45, which isn't terrible. Again, that's what Josh Dobbs did last year in the first game to San Francisco. So the, Operation Contain Kyler that I was spouting last podcast did somewhat come to pass. Passing-wise, Murray over 211. They did turn him over twice, Charvarius Ward, courtesy of those 2 interceptions. But the running game really is what kept Arizona in it. And look who they're playing next. Baltimore. Baltimore is going to want to run with Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. They did lose Mitchell to a bad knee injury last night against the Jaguars. You hate to see that. And of course, Lamar Jackson, even if he doesn't run past the line of scrimmage, what he can do buying time. And if you watch that Baltimore-Jacksonville game, he was buying upwards of 8 seconds before throwing the ball or deciding to scamper and pick up a couple yards. That's going to be tough for this defense to contain, and it's probably going to be another week without Eric Armstead. Hopefully Javon Kinlaw can come back. They may be down Kalia Davis, but I mean, that's a good trade-off, right? If Davis is out and Armstead is in, that's a plus. I'm sorry, if Hargrave is in. And maybe Eric Armstead, this is a game that he can come back for, but the run defense, we have not seen shredded like that in quite some time. And Arizona didn't go away from it. They leaned into it and had more rushing yards in the second half than they did in the first half. And the first half felt bad. The second half didn't feel as bad because the Niners pulled away. But Arizona was remaining committed to the run, giving them manageable down and distance, manageable third downs. Murray throwing an interception to kill a drive in the third quarter, and then just not being able to stop San Francisco eased the sting of the 49ers not being able to stop the run. But it's a thing. And yes, this may just bump their average up to maybe, high 90s now. Still averaging probably less than 100 yards a game in some, or an average. But this was not good. And this is tape that teams have on San Francisco now. You bet John Harbaugh and his team are going to be looking at what Arizona did because they have, in some ways, structurally the same team. They want to run the ball. They have a mobile quarterback. Their receivers aren't the strength of their team. What Baltimore doesn't have is a tight end like Trey McBride because Mark Andrews is going to be lost for most of the season. There's still hope he can come back in the playoffs dealing with that ankle injury. So there are things to tighten up, to be sure, leading up into the Christmas night game against Baltimore and the rest of the way, obviously, as they head into the playoffs. The MVP discussion for Brock Purdy got a little bit louder this week, and he is now the favorite per DraftKings Sportsbook. He's coming in at negative 150 after his 4 touchdown, 242-yard performance. On the year, Purdy has 3,795 passing yards, 29 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, a 119 rating. And at least for 1 week, that's going to put the Dak Prescott discussion off to the side as he did not throw a touchdown against the Bills, looked bad. He is now about 150 yards behind Purdy yards-wise, and Prescott has 28 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, Purdy with 29 and 7. Tua leads the league right now in completion percentage at 71 even. Brock Purdy is right there at 69.8, and Dak Prescott behind him at 68.8. Tua, though, touchdowns to interceptions is 25 to 10. And as far as QB ratings go, Purdy is at 119, Tua is at 106, Prescott is at 104. And again, the other players potentially in play, Tyreek Hill sitting out a game may hurt his candidacy. It's going to hurt his yardage and touchdown production, but he could still get over 2,000 yards the next 3 games. But look what Miami did against the Jets without him. If you want to talk about most valuable player, and yes, they struggled some against the Titans. They did put up 27 points before the Titans came back and won that game ridiculously, 28-27. But this was a game, the Dolphins struggling against the Jets a couple weeks ago. Remember the Fail Mary Dolphin, the Black Friday game after Thanksgiving, the Miami Dolphins returning that for a touchdown. Won the game, but it wasn't the prettiest looking game. Tyreek Hill is out this week. Dolphins blank the Jets 30-0. Now, Tyreek Hill had nothing to do with the 0 that the Dolphins defense let up, but 30 points and a team was missing their number 1 receiver against a very, very good Jets defense and very, very good Jets secondary. I don't want to say that knocks Tyreek Hill's importance to the Dolphins because he's ridiculously important. But I mean, right now, Purdy, Prescott, Tua, and even looking at like Lamar Jackson's numbers, I know he does a lot on the ground, 3,100 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Not wildly impressive. And Josh Allen won the game for the Bills because the coaches took it out of his hands. And we may go over that a little bit more in the plus section, but he's thrown for 3,500 passing yards. He's about 250 behind Brock, 26 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. He is second in the league in passing interceptions behind Washington's Sam Howell. So I'm not going to say it's Purdy's to lose. I'm not sure if it's that clear cut between him and Tua and Prescott. And then again, if you want to throw in Tyreek and even Christian McCaffrey, and that's something that I want to segue into. Purdy was asked, how do you feel? There's a lot of momentum for you becoming the MVP. And, I think Brock has got a good head on his shoulders. Obviously, he's a person of faith and seems to be very humble. Here was his response to that question. Quote, "I'm honored, but man, I think I have a great team around me and guys willing to make plays and stuff. So I'm trying to do my part and help our team win, and I'm very honored to hear it. But I think Christian should be MVP. I really do believe that. He does everything for us, runs the ball well, can catch the ball. He does everything. And so in my eyes, that's an MVP. Here's McCaffrey's line. 1,292 rushing yards and 13 rushing touchdowns, 57 receptions for 509 yards and 7 touchdowns. He has a chance right now. He's at 1,800 yards. He has a really good chance of going over 2,000 all-purpose yards, which would be a converse. I mean, right now he has more all-purpose yards than Tyreek Hill. And granted, Tyreek Hill is just a receiver. But if you want to talk about the impact on the team, he's got 20 total touchdowns. I think you can make a very good case for Christian McCaffrey being the MVP. A running back would get it usually when they get close to 1,000 yards or 2,000 yards rushing. Barry Sanders, Terrell Davis, Adrian Peterson. He's not going to get there. He's going to go over probably the all-purpose yards. But McCaffrey or Purdy would be very, very deserving. And it's not like, they're going to split the vote and water it down and it's going to go to Dak or Tua. This isn't like a Democrat and Republican thing. You're still all the votes are still going towards, a pool of maybe 5 players. So it's not, I don't really think the McCaffrey thing is going to hurt Purdy thing. If people feel really strong about Purdy, it's going to come away from the quarterbacks. And I think if people feel really strongly from McCaffrey, it's going to come away from Tyreek Hill. Still got 3 weeks to decide that, but it's been a long time since we've had a 49er player be MVP, going all the way back to 1994, the last Super Bowl win. Steve Young getting the MVP, but it's nice that the Niners have 2 potential candidates, and people, sports books, non-moronic media talking heads, even a Cam Newton saying that Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy and others are game managers. Well, Cam Newton, you're out of the league, dude. If you were able to manage a game a little bit better, maybe you would be in the league. You had one good season. You won MVP, great. But MVPs also dive on the ball in the Super Bowl when it's loose. Don't think anybody's forgotten about that. And you ain't in the NFL because you just ain't good enough anymore. And if you could manage stuff a little bit better, you would be in the NFL. Sticking with McCaffrey, though, McCaffrey tied with that game 2 San Francisco records. He has 100 or more scrimmage yards in 7 straight games and 11 total games with 100 or more scrimmage yards, which ties Roger Craig's record from 1985 and 1988. And that's something that McCaffrey is just going to add on to, because you have to figure he's good for between 50 and 80 rushing yards a game and another 30 to 50 receiving. So we'll see 11 total games now. We'll see if he can get that up to 14. That's what he would max out at in the regular season. And lastly, let's just conclude with injuries, and we'll have some final thoughts on the Arizona game. So you saw Brock Purdy went out. Originally, there was some worry that it was a concussion with that high hit, and it was slightly helmet to helmet with a Cardinals defender, but it wound up being a stinger in his left arm. After the game, Purdy said that I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what it felt like. But as time went on, as I was walking it through and talking about my symptoms, things eased, and I was told it was a stinger. I just never had one of those before. I thought it was more than it was. But the interesting thing about the injury, Darnold comes in, and Shanahan just keeps on throwing. Like, maybe he thought that your backup quarterback, Sam Darnold, is in, and maybe the Cardinals were geared up to take away McCaffrey on a run. But I don't know if they were or weren't, but he came out throwing on 2 plays. Incompletions. One was like a weird throwback down that he was rolling left and threw back down the right sideline to Kittle. Not like it almost got intercepted, but it was just a weird, maybe he was expecting Kittle to be open and there not to be a defender in such close proximity. But you would think, even as much trust and faith as Shanahan probably has in Sam Darnold, that you want to hand the ball off there, especially in Arizona territory, to try to get away with, gave some points. But it was only a handful of plays that Brock was out for and came back in, and I believe on that drive led them to a score. Cornerback Diamador Lenore had a rib injury, and at the end of the game, per Kyle Shanahan, he was stepped on. So his rib area was sore. They're going to reevaluate today in the coming days to see the extent of that, but hopefully it's nothing major. And I mentioned defensive tackle Kalia Davis injured his ankle, did not return. I will not say that that was one of the reasons why the Niners just got shredded by the Cardinals running the ball, but not having a fourth defensive tackle in there certainly did not help matters. We'll keep an eye on his health, along with starters Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave, as the Niners do have an extra day to prepare, as their game against the Ravens will be Christmas night on Monday. But, overall, stem to stern, that first drive by Arizona did not look good, did not feel good. Great to see the Niners respond. They respond again with a pick six, then another touchdown to get up 21-7. And then the Cardinals wound up chipping away and leaning into their running game, which, again, I don't know if they provided any sort of blueprint for how to attack this 49er defense, because you would think that the run game or the run defense would be a bit stronger than the pass defense, because the secondary is linked to the pass rush, and the pass rush has been getting home more in recent weeks. They did get to Murray 3 times, sack-wise. But for teams that are going to look to run the ball, Baltimore certainly will. They got Washington after that. I'm not sure what's going on with that team. But the Rams, everything Sean McVay does offensively comes off of the run. And Kyron Williams, their running back, now that he's back from injury, is having a really good season and return from injury. And again, that could be a game with a lot on the line for both teams. A wild card for the Rams, potentially home field advantage for the Niners. And then whoever they see in the playoffs, Dallas will probably want to try to establish the run. Philadelphia, Tampa really can't run the ball that well. If they see the Rams or the Seahawks, or teams are not going to abandon the run in any game unless they absolutely have to. And if any team upcoming that is playing the Niners sees something, sees a certain gap or a certain crease or cutback or a certain double team off of a D tackle onto a linebacker that they can free up their running game, they will look at this Cardinals tape very closely and interpret however much they can to go get any edge they can against the team right now in the Niners that many are saying is the best team in the NFL. But bottom line, this could have been a look-ahead game. This could have been an emotional letdown game after the Eagles, after defeating another NFC West opponent at home in the Cardinals, and looking ahead to a Christmas game against Baltimore, obviously a much tougher opponent, and potentially a Super Bowl preview, which will be nationally televised for everybody on Christmas night. But they kept their heads down, very workmanlike. First drive for Arizona was they were up 7-0, and the Niners never trailed again after that, and put up 45 points, a season high, up on the Cardinals. And now they can look ahead to Baltimore, a team, again, built very similarly to the Cardinals in terms of what they ask of their QB, how they would like to run the ball, read option or not, and having just a mobile quarterback to buy time for receivers to get open down the field. Should be a good one on Christmas night. We will break that down on the Thursday episode of the podcast. So that concludes the 49ers section for today. But stick around in the plus section. We're going to be talking Jets, Giants, and teams that are frauds, including the Cowboys, the Packers, and the Jaguars. Stick around.
It's plus time.
So living in the Northeast, listening to sports talk radio, ESPN radio, The Fan, hearing all these mouth-breather Jets and Giant fans getting all excited because Tommy DeVito won 3 games, which is a great story. I'm an Italian-American. And he grew up not too far away from where I live. Great story. And if nothing else, he's proving that the Giants have a pretty decent backup quarterback moving forward. But hearing fans talk about, is Tommy DeVito the future? We don't need Daniel Jones. We don't need to draft a quarterback. All nonsensical stuff. And the way the Giants and Jets now are 5-9, they're probably falling out of the realm of drafting one of the top quarterbacks. I mean, they could trade up if they fall in love with somebody. But the thought that the Jets and Giants had any sort of real playoff hopes just went up in smoke this weekend. The Jets officially eliminated. Now it's 13 straight seasons without a playoff berth, getting absolutely destroyed in Miami, blanked 30-0. This is a Miami team that had no Tyreek Hill and was missing some other pieces as well. Zach Wilson went out with a concussion. Trevor Siemian came in. I'm not saying if Zach Wilson was in that they would have won the game. They would not have. Trevor Siemian did not help matters. They were not able to move the ball all that well. And for as good as the Jets defense has been, what happened? 30 points without Tyreek Hill. What happened, Jets defense? So the Jets are done. They're going to play out the string the last 3 games. Aaron Rodgers has been cleared to resume football activities. Last week, there was a big to-do about he was playing defense on the scout team and made a one-handed interception. And the first thing that went through my mind was, why the hell is anyone having Aaron Rodgers play defense on the scout team? I'm sure he wasn't covering anybody running across the field, but what are you doing? This is why the Jets are a clown show organization. Nobody should be looking at that and going, oh my God, he's 40 years old and look at how he healed and he's athletic and one-handed interception. It's, why are you putting your franchise on defense at all or out there other than just maybe throwing the ball, working with trainers, strength and conditioning, doing rehab for his Achilles? But that's why they're the Jets. That's why they're a joke. And that's why just end the season happened yesterday on Sunday in South Florida. But now the Giants are going up against the Saints in New Orleans. Not an easy place to win. The Saints have a good defense, but everyone's saying, well, you know, if the Giants could beat the Saints, and maybe they can give the Eagles problems because we blitz a lot, and maybe we could sneak out a win there, and then they still have to beat the Eagles again. And just the mindset. Listen, hope is a good thing. Religion is based upon hope. A lot of things that people have are built upon hope. The rebellion in Star Wars was built upon hope, whatever that line was from Rogue One. But there's hope, and then there's wishing, and then there's stupidity. Stupid people were wishing that the Giants and the Jets can go on more of a run and be a playoff team. And then what? You just get humiliated in the first round, and you just get caught in this endless loop of mediocrity, better than you thought, expectations next year, and you're just crap again. The Giants may win another game. They may go 6-11, but they are playing themselves out of a potential difference maker at quarterback if anyone out there or Giants management does not believe in Daniel Jones. Tommy DeVito is a very nice story. If he turns into a Brock Purdy-like story and becomes their starter and becomes a winner, I'll be rooting for him too. The Italian-American thing, local kid, Jersey kid, it is a great story. But the realistic way this plays out is Tommy DeVito's the backup next year. Daniel Jones is their starter, and if the Giants can draft high enough, they really should. Giants have holes in a lot of areas. They should potentially look at a quarterback of the future and get rid of Daniel Jones after next season when the cap hit isn't as untenable as it is now. So they're not frauds. I think the fans are frauds, or the fans are mouth-breathing, knuckle-dragging morons, which is probably more the case living in the Northeast, thinking that they had more than they did. But again, it's the holiday season. It's the season of joy, hope, maybe even forgiveness. Although I'm not going to forgive their stupidity because I'm still going to have to listen to it daily on Sports Talk Radio. So the Giants and Jets are not frauds. The Cowboys are frauds. The Cowboys go to Buffalo, lose 31-10, score a late garbage touchdown, a CeeDee Lamb 3-yard handoff touchdown. They're held to 195 yards. And if you were a Cowboy fan and said, you know what, you're going to go up to Buffalo and you're going to hold Josh Allen to 94 yards, you would think you win that game easily. But instead, Buffalo ran it 49 times for 266 yards and 3 touchdowns. We're going to talk about Buffalo also in a second, but Philadelphia, the Cowboys beating Philadelphia is still the only win the Cowboys have against a team with the winning record. And good teams are supposed to beat up on bad teams, and that is what the Cowboys do. Except against the Cardinals. They lost to the Cardinals. But otherwise, they lost to the Eagles, the Niners, and the Bills. And the Niners and Bills embarrassed them. The Eagles, they only lost by, 6 points? It was one score. Dallas is going to have problems playing on the road. They are more than likely not going to win the NFC East. Dallas has to go to Miami next, has Detroit at home, and at the Commanders. Philly is at Seattle, at home for the Giants, at home for Arizona, and at the Giants. Seattle's going to win 3, if not all 4 of those games. Dallas will be the 5 seed. They will be on the road, and we'll see what they can do come playoff time. But they are not nearly as good as the media makes them out to be. They get the benefit of the doubt because of the star on their helmet. Dak Prescott got the benefit of the doubt because he plays quarterback for the team with a star on their helmet. But if you can't beat good teams and you can only beat teams that are sub 500, that does not make you one of the upper echelon teams. 10-4 still looks really good. It does. It's like James Harden dropping 40 points in a 20-point loss. Good numbers, but they're hollow. They're meaningless. Because we know what's going to happen to Dallas when the playoffs roll around. Josh Allen gets an honorary fraud mention. The Bills coaching staff, Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, took the ball out of his hands and they won by 21. It's taken Joe Brady to come in. It's taken Ken Dorsey to get fired and Joe Brady to come in to realize, yes, Josh Allen is a special talent. Yes, Josh Allen has elite traits, but having elite traits does not make you an elite quarterback. Not when he is second in the NFL in interceptions and probably could have a half a dozen more just based on some of the stupid throws that he's made where defenders could not hold on to the ball. So Josh Allen, and listen, he made fun of himself. He said, hey, I feel like I'm the kid on a science project that didn't do anything that still got the A. Good for him that he's able to recognize that he really didn't contribute to this victory. But any team, especially a Northeast team, you don't need to go back to the early 90s, Jim Kelly, Andre Reed, Thurman Thomas, K-Gun offense, because while it did get them to 4 straight Super Bowls, they didn't win any. And the Bills, under the Josh Allen, Sean McDermott regime, have been to 1 AFC championship game. Be more balanced. James Cook is turning into a very, very good player. The less Josh Allen throws, in some ways, the better the Bills have a chance of winning. Are there going to be some games where they need to get into a shootout and throw? Yes. But if they can control the ball, time of possession, not turn it over, not fumble, anything like that, and limit the opportunities that Josh Allen has to make a bonehead decision, because Josh Allen's one of those players, he makes a lot of boneheaded decisions, but for every one great highlight-worthy play he makes, for every 2 great highlight-worthy plays, he makes 1 bonehead-worthy one. And because it's a 2-to-1 ratio, nobody really thinks about the boneheaded ones. People are just, again, chicks in baseball dig the long ball. Ooh, look at that scramble. He threw that a laser. Only Josh Allen can make that throw. That's great. He doesn't have a ring. He hasn't even been to a Super Bowl. Maybe you want to limit the Josh Allen-ness of this offense moving forward. Maybe the Bills might actually have a shot in the AFC. Fraud number 2, or I guess 3, the Packers. The Packers were 6-6. And people, including myself, thought they might be able to run the table at the time, win 5 straight and go 11-6. Since then, they lost at the Giants, and Jordan Love looked terrible. The whole team looked terrible. And then yesterday, they lost 34-20 at home against the Buccaneers in a game that both teams needed. Now the Packers are 6-8 on the outside looking in of the wild card, the last wild card spot. And they allowed, of all people, Baker Mayfield as the first visiting quarterback to have a perfect rating at Lambeau Field. Tampa, playing in a cold weather stadium. And I don't know if it was all that cold yesterday in Lambeau. And Jordan Love didn't have a bad game. Decent completion percentage. Threw for 200 yards. Packers couldn't stop anybody. Couldn't tackle anybody. They had a 49er-like poor tackling game. But man, did we really think the Packers are a team that they're not. We thought they could go 11-6. The best they could go is 9-8 now, and I'm not really too convinced that they're going to win 2 out of their next 3. So the Packers are frauds. Jacksonville. Now listen, they had a tough game last night against Baltimore. They lost 23-7, missed 2 field goals, a touchdown that could have been a touchdown that wasn't. Trevor Lawrence scrambling and just dropping the ball inside the 25-yard line. That was an opportunity for points as well. But this was a team that was 8-3. That's now lost 3 straight, and they're 8-6. They lost at home against Cincinnati on Monday night, at Cleveland, games where they played backup quarterbacks and still lost. Now, last week at Cleveland, Trevor Lawrence fought through a high ankle sprain. Got to give him credit. Had gutted it out. 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, threw for some good yardage, but could not get the victory. And they are playing without Christian Kirk, who's a very good slot receiver. But right now, the Jags are tied with the Colts and the Texans, all at 8-6 in the AFC South. Right now, they are frauds. Last night was a measuring stick game. It was a game to get them 1 game closer to Baltimore and only 1 game back of the number 1 seed. And they either didn't show up, or they showed up and just fumbled it away, or did not put them in position to really compete in that game. And the defense was playing well in the first half, just down 10-0. They had that bad sequence at the end of the half where they got it down to around the 12-yard line. They hurry up. Lawrence hurries up to the line of scrimmage, taps his helmet. You think he was going to snap it to give them 2 throws into the end zone. Instead, he throws an out to a rookie receiver who gets tackled inbounds and the half ends. You can't do that. You have to guarantee 3 to make it a 1-score game. Or you can't throw it inbounds. All throws have to be into the end zone. Such a bad decision. Right now, the Jaguars from 8-3 to 8-6 and frauds. And the wild card teams in the AFC, the 3 that would be in today, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis, all helmed by backup quarterbacks. Flacco, I guess technically the 4th string quarterback. Bengals with Browning, and the Colts with Gardner Minshew. Behind them, you have Houston and Buffalo at 8-6, Pittsburgh and Denver at 7-7. I think as football fans, we really need to hope that the Bills get into the playoffs. Otherwise, the AFC wildcards are a joke. And yes, it's the NFL. Any given Sunday, teams could win, but I don't want to see Joe Flacco and Jake Browning and Gardner Minshew in the playoffs. Give me Josh Allen, even though I just said he shouldn't be throwing the ball that much. At least he's a little bit more exciting to watch. Give me C.J. Stroud in Houston. That'll be a great story. I'd be pulling for Houston in their playoff game. Other than fans of teams of the AFC South, who would not be pulling for C.J. Stroud? Well, I guess Carolina Panther fans as well, because they could have gotten Stroud instead of Bryce Young. And the NFC wild cards, marginally better. The number 5 seed is going to be either Dallas or Philadelphia, who doesn't win the NFC East. And then right now, Minnesota, the Rams, and the Saints are all 7-7. And Seattle, if they beat the Eagles tonight, they'll be 7-7. But Minnesota, backup quarterback now, it's Nick Mullins. The Rams might be the most enticing of this bunch. The Saints with Carr and that offense that's sputtering. And Seattle, just another sputtering team. Wild cards are wild cards for a reason. They are not division champs, but outside of Dallas or Philadelphia, no wild card team looks really appealing, interesting to watch, or could threaten a division champ in the first round. And it really would be either Dallas or Philadelphia, because they would go to the NFC South champion, which would either be Tampa, the Saints, or the Falcons. Dallas or Philly could easily go into any one of those 3 areas and beat any one of those 3 teams. Maybe the Saints would give them the biggest battle, because the Saints have the best defense of the 3. And maybe by that time, Chris Olave would be back. Maybe Michael Thomas would be back as well. But the wild cards are just very, very mediocre. So I'm not sure how interesting of a first round it's going to make once we get there 4 weeks from now. NFL season went by quick. But that concludes the podcast for today. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. Monday Night Football tonight, Eagles at the Seahawks. We'll be rooting for the Seahawks hard tonight. Want to see the Eagles get another loss. I don't care what happens in the NFC East. I don't care who wins that. Would just be nice for the Niners to get a buffer game should they drop one of their last 3 along the way to help solidify the Niners getting that number 1 pick. But between now and when we talk next, I think there might be more bowl games on, bowl season. I'm going to talk about that a little bit on, I believe, on the Thursday podcast, in addition to any odds and ends from the Niners-Cardinals game, any noteworthy news. Then we'll break down 49ers-Ravens on Christmas night. We'll give NFL picks for the upcoming games. Basketball, hockey, college basketball, college football, a lot going on, and anything else that you're into, TV streaming, movies, etc. Whatever you do, remember, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay safe, and we will talk soon. Take care.